I was hospitalized to save my son after a car accident, but he took over the company shares during my hospitalization, and even had the maid drug me. It wasn't until I died that I found out he was the child of a scumbag and a mistress. Over the years, I had done everything I could to give him the best, while the scumbag and mistress lived happily together in secret. In the end, as I lay dying, he told me, "When your son is truly unlucky, I've wanted you dead for a long time. If it weren't for you, my parents would have been together years ago." Opening my eyes again, Leo had his feet up on the table, playing games fiercely, telling me, "Get lost. Don't bother me playing. I'm not going to this summer camp no matter what." With a year left before the college entrance exam, Leo's grades were poor, and I was scrambling to get him an opportunity to attend this summer camp. In his past life, he resisted angrily, but after much persuasion, and giving him 100,000 pocket money, I managed to convince him to go to England. But once in England, he went to reunite with his birth parents. With a smirk, Leo said, "She acts like my servant," pleading while getting scolded. Thinking about this, I clenched my fists and walked out of the room. "Fine, we won't go. The 50,000 tuition is quite expensive. I'll arrange to cancel it now." Leo didn't expect me to do this. Caught off guard, he watched me leave the room. Not until he heard that I had indeed called the assistant to process the cancellation of his camp enrollment did he panic and come out to find me. "Mom, you really cancelled it." I smiled and put down my phone. "If you don't want to study, then don't. Now, I think going to an ordinary school is fine with your grades." Leo widened his eyes. "How can this be? You said you'd send me to a top-tier university in the future. Ruining my future this way. Not only will I ruin your future, I will also ruin the life you swindled from me. Ruin all three of you as a family." That afternoon at the office, I overheard the maid saying that Leo had thrown many things in the villa, and was venting his frustration. I knew he was doing it for my benefit. Every time in my past life, I thought about the son I had worked so hard to give birth to. I always chose to influence him with patience and care. But I didn't know, when I was in critical condition with postpartum hemorrhage, my own child died as soon as it was born. It was my ex-husband who took the opportunity to bring the mistress's child over and deceive me, making me raise their child with all my heart. And Leo, who knows when he found out his true identity, has been harboring resentment around me for so many years. At that moment, I heard the sound of smashing and cursing in the video call from him. I immediately ordered, "First, calculate the cost of the things he broke, deduct it from his personal account, and cut off his living expenses. Since he's not my son, I don't need to spend another penny on him. Second, cut off his lunch and don't let him have any snacks. He will stay hungry until he apologizes. Furthermore, starting today, no one in the family should unconditionally indulge him anymore. If he acts out again, we will teach him a lesson. If he dares to fight back, kick him out of the villa." Everyone was stunned at first, then responded excitedly. I always knew that Leo had tormented these old employees over the years. Many were so angry, saying he shouldn't be my child, but kept quiet out of respect for me. This time, they all sighed, glad I had finally stopped being soft-hearted. But there was one young maid. Upon hearing me say to cut off his living expenses, her face changed. She was the Linda who had an affair with Leo, but was caught by me, and ultimately broke up with him for drugging me. Leo specifically smashed my beloved collectibles and precious vases, with the loss amounting to nearly 8 figures. This deduction almost wiped out all the money he had received from me over the years. Looking at the continuous deduction messages on his phone, he exploded, threatening suicide. But I knew he wouldn't really die. How could someone so selfish and sinister easily give up their own life? In the evening, after finishing up the work at the office, I had a sumptuous dinner outside. It had been a long time since I had enjoyed such a lavish feast alone. After a few glasses of wine, I felt relaxed both physically and mentally. When I returned home, I found Leo kissing Linda at the staircase. Linda was startled when she saw me, looking frightened. But in my past life, this seemingly timid Linda insisted on drugging me in my food for a full 3 months. "What are you hiding from?" Leo looked at Linda, but his intentions were clearly directed at me and our past affair. At this moment, he probably thought that sinking into debauchery could provoke me. But in this world, other than your loved ones, who else would care for you? I walked up to Leo with a smile and patted his shoulder. "I was wrong in the past. I shouldn't have blocked your relationship." Upon hearing this, not only Linda was overjoyed, but Leo also turned to look at me in disbelief. With a cold snort from his nostrils, he lifted his chin disdainfully. Then in the next second, in a tender tone, I said to Linda, "How about this? I decide that you two get engaged, and when Leo is of age, he will marry you. Linda was extremely excited at this suggestion, while Leo's face suddenly turned pale. As amazed as me, Leo couldn't contain his anger and blurted out, "Who gave you the right to decide on my affairs?" And I just smiled and looked at him, "Because I'm your mom." This was the first time I used my motherhood to pressure Leo. In the past, no matter how big his mistake, I considered his feelings and communicated with him as a friend. Although I was hurt by his words all night, I never spoke harshly to him. At this moment, he stared at me with resentment in his eyes, a stomach full of anger he couldn't let out. After a while, he said the truth in a sarcastic manner, "You're not my mom." I responded with a gentle smile, meaningfully saying, "But you're my good son." The next day, I quickly arranged for Linda's parents to discuss their engagement, publicly announcing their relationship in front of everyone. Leo was embarrassed this time. He had bullied many others in school with his money before, but now that this matter came out, everyone knew he was in a relationship with the family maid. For a moment, not only did his classmates mock him, but also the rich kids from the upper class looked down on him. "I'm not dating anymore. I'm studying. Isn't that good enough?" He yelled at me again. "Hurry up and sign me up for that summer camp. I'm going." But how could I give him another chance? "No need, son, it's this era. Mom supports your free love. Next month is your coming of age ceremony. Mom has to plan it well. Make sure you have an unforgettable birthday." Leo got angry, slammed the door, and left home. That night, he came back with red eyes, didn't eat dinner, went straight to his room and talked on the phone all night. I looked at Leo's call history on the screen, lips slightly curling up. Did he finally go complain to his parents? I couldn't help but wonder. I was also looking forward to seeing my ex-husband, who I hadn't seen in years, and his wife. Sure enough, a week later, I saw Leo's birth mother, Cindy, downstairs at the company. Cindy had become my assistant during my pregnancy and managed to steal Henry, who was then the vice president of my company. When I was about to give birth, I found intimate photos of them in Henry's phone. I felt like the sky was falling, so I hastily divorced and fired them both. It wasn't until later, when Leo was 5 years old and almost drowned, that Cindy risked her life to save him. In my past life, I was so grateful to her that I let go of all the old grudges. But now, looking at her face, I couldn't help but notice how similar Leo was to her. But I wasn't in a hurry to expose her, because I wanted the three of them, at Leo's coming-of-age ceremony, to be disgraced in front of everyone. "Alice," Cindy waved happily when she saw me. I hid the coldness in my eyes, smiled, and walked up to her. "Long time no see. Why did you suddenly come to New York?" A hint of chill flashed in Cindy's eyes, but she quickly smiled and held my hand. "What a coincidence, Alice. I've been in Shanghai for business for the past month, and will stay for at least 2 months. Without any change in my tone, I asked, "Did Henry come with you?" Seeing Cindy a little uneasy, I smiled and comforted her. "It's okay. It's been so many years. I've let it go. Besides, you risked your life to save Leo, and I'm grateful to you. I've long held no grudges." Cindy let out a sigh of relief after confirming that my eyes showed nothing unusual. "He came too. He's been with me these past 2 months. Suddenly, she changed the subject. "I heard in the industry that Leo is about to get engaged, but I don't believe it. How can the other person be your family's maid? How is that appropriate?" "Cindy, that's not right. In this day and age, who cares about background?" I interrupted her directly. "Since Leo has someone he likes, I respect his wishes." Cindy's face visibly darkened. Unwillingly, she asked, "Alice, with your wealth, aren't you going to prepare a few mansions for Leo?" I couldn't help but sneer at her words. "Do I have to raise your son for you and give him the assets to inherit?" Seeing that I didn't respond, Cindy kindly advised, "Leo is your only son. In the future, won't everything of yours be his? Since you have to give it to him sooner or later, why not prepare some personal property for him before his marriage? Not only will it prevent others from looking down on him, but it will also maintain the relationship between you and your son. Let's talk about it later. There's no need for a family to split things so clearly." Seeing Cindy's increasingly gloomy face, I patted her shoulder with a smile. "Next month is Leo's 18th birthday celebration. I'm planning a big one for him. You and Henry must come." "Sure." Cindy's eyes quickly turned, probably already imagining the future scene where the mother and son would shine. But she had no idea that I would make this coming-of-age ceremony her eternal nightmare. After saying goodbye to Cindy, I walked out of the cafe, and a man wearing a hat and a mask suddenly bumped into me. I'm sorry. He apologized verbally, but showed no intention of moving away. I frowned and walked away. For the next week, Leo was rarely at home. He always swaggered out in front of me, talking on the phone and shouting, "Dad, wait for me. I'm coming over. Clearly, he was trying to provoke me, and I waved goodbye to him with a smile, reminding him to be polite to Henry. I thought Henry at this age would only resort to these childish tactics, but I underestimated him. Or rather, I underestimated the three of them. The day before Leo's coming-of-age ceremony, I finally had the time to check my phone and read messages. Suddenly, I saw a highly upvoted post on a forum. Female company CEO, to please young boyfriend, is willing to destroy her own son. There was a blurry frontal photo, showing a woman closely attached to a man in black. The post described how this woman had a younger boyfriend, and was planning to marry him this year. But because her boyfriend didn't like her son, she forcibly arranged a bad marriage for her underage son, and was determined to kick him out. And the person in the photo was me, the very same person who had been bumped into by a stranger that day. I realized at that moment that all of this had been premeditated, all arranged by them. The post caused a huge uproar, with lots of criticism in the comments. The post had been reposted on social platforms by many accounts, fueling the fire and making it a trending topic. It's laughable how over the years I've turned down countless advances, just for Leo, enduring from my 20s to almost 40. But instead of gratitude, they not only didn't appreciate it, but used such despicable means to ruin me. While contacting a team of lawyers to sue the rumormongers, I spent money to have those posts taken down. And I had people do everything possible to find the man who had been bribed to defame me. Although I managed to suppress this matter in the shortest time, some people in the industry knew about it and believed it to be true. On the day of Leo's coming-of-age ceremony, he didn't wear the customized outfit that I had spent a lot of money on for him. Defiantly, he put on the one that Henry and Cindy had bought for him instead. He poured drinks for Henry and Cindy first, during the toasting session, then reluctantly came to me last. Most of the people present had seen that post and easily guessed that the person in it was me. Therefore, they not only did not find Leo's behavior rude, but instead felt very sorry for him, thinking that I was getting what I deserved. Many business partners even considered ending our cooperation after the contract expired. Henry also criticized me in front of everyone with a black face. Alice, I reluctantly handed Leo over to you, and this is how you take care of him. And now you're making hasty decisions about his marriage today. Cindy, on the other hand, hypocritically tried to persuade Henry. All right, Henry, I've also advised Alice, but she insists on doing this. So there must be a reason. Don't you think so, Alice? Many people started gossiping after this, undoubtedly thinking that I was being too harsh, almost like an evil mother. I pretended not to hear any of this and used changing clothes as an excuse to go to the dressing room. I knew that the man who was seen with me on blog before was now hiding in the dressing room, waiting for me to come and confirm our relationship. Feeling the malicious gaze behind me, I calmly walked into the dressing room and closed the door. Meanwhile, all the guests had assembled outside. At the climax of the banquet, a video titled Leo's Growth Journey started playing on the big screen. However, I had received information beforehand that Linda had switched the contents of this video. According to their plan, it was supposed to be a scandalous video of me with the man in the dressing room. As I watched the scene in the hall through the big screen, Leo, thinking that his plan had succeeded since I hadn't come out yet, was excitedly talking to Henry. Soon after the opening credits, the main movie was about to start. Leo's mouth was counting down, 3, 2, 1, and his eyes were bloodshot with excitement. Just as he was about to burst out and start yelling at me, the audience erupted into a commotion. This can't be. At that moment, Leo collapsed, because what was displayed on the screen was not an indecent video of me but of him. In the video, Leo was completely entangled with Linda. Not only was he enthusiastic in his actions, but there were also scattered party drugs around them. What was even more shocking was that as a minor, he not only tasted forbidden fruit, but also played some very inappropriate and taboo games. Now all the guests understood why I had arranged such a marriage for Leo. They even thought that Leo was a jerk, a beast. I looked at the man who had fainted in the dressing room, sneered, and dialed the police. Chaos had erupted outside. Turn off the video. Turn it off. Cindy was on the verge of fainting. Henry rushed to the computer and desperately tried to shut it down, insisting, "This is all slander." Leo was furious, pointing at the screen and shouting, "This shouldn't be happening." But Henry covered his mouth tightly. There was a lot of discussion among the people in the hall. Are kids nowadays so wild? No wonder Alice was in such a hurry to arrange his marriage. Leo is simply a scum, a disgrace to his mother. What kind of adulthood ceremony is this? Today is really a complete embarrassment. Amidst the numerous conversations, I appeared in front of everyone feeling extremely distressed. Just as I had changed my clothes. How could Leo be like this? When Leo saw me come out unscathed, he was stunned, unable to say a word. Henry, on the other hand, came to his senses first, grabbed my wrist forcefully, and angrily demanded, "Alice, tell me what's going on. Did you set up this video? Are you intentionally trying to ruin Leo?" I already knew he would say that. I gave Henry a hard slap, and while he was still stunned, I rushed onto the stage, picked up the microphone, and loudly declared, "The video shown today was supposed to be a compilation of Leo's growth journey over the years, which I personally recorded and brought here. I don't know who replaced it with such abhorrent and inappropriate content, but rest assured, I have dispatched people to retrieve the surveillance video, and I believe the culprit will be exposed soon." The crowd below cheered and eagerly awaited the truth, while Henry and the others were in shock. Linda panicked and tried to run, but was blocked by the people I had arranged in advance. When she poisoned me in my food in my past life, she didn't look so timid. This matter was indeed disgraceful and involving Leo. Let's not make a big fuss about it. And investigating the surveillance is not an easy task. Cindy anxiously tried to dissuade. I solemnly told her, "It's precisely because it involves Leo that I need to investigate thoroughly. Cindy, you're not Henry's mother. You don't understand how I feel right now. Once I find out who is behind this, I will make her pay the price with the most severe measures." Cindy was taken aback and couldn't say a word. Soon, the truth came to light. The surveillance camera clearly captured Linda switching the video unnoticed in the first 5 minutes before the playback. "So it was you, Linda. You wanted to force Leo to marry you in such a despicable way publicly. You're despicable. Today, I will teach you a lesson on behalf of Alice and Leo." Afraid that Linda would expose them, Cindy was the first to rush over, grabbing Linda's clothes and going mad, hitting and kicking her. Linda was beaten so badly, with a face full of blood, she couldn't say a word. I coldly watched from the side and secretly signaled to the bodyguards to stop Linda's parents from intervening. I wanted to take this opportunity to avenge her poisoning me in my past life. In the end, Linda's face was ruined, and she lay on the ground like muddy water. Her family cried and rushed over to carry her away, calling for an ambulance. But that's not all. Next, I sadly announced in public that Leo's actions were absurd, disappointing to me and a joke to everyone. To prove that I, Alice, am not one to make blind judgments, I declared that from today on, all my belongings have nothing to do with Leo. I will have a lawyer draw up a legal document shortly, and I ask all of you to witness this with me. This news was like a bolt from the blue for Leo and his 2 friends. At the end of that day, despite the noisy background, I decisively left under the escort of bodyguards. A few days later, the police contacted me and informed me about the interrogation record of that man. The police said the man was an unemployed hoodlum named Jason, and he had confessed to everything. Jason claimed it was all orchestrated by Henry and Cindy, who gave him $1 million to tarnish my reputation. The police mentioned that they were still collecting specific evidence against Henry and Cindy, but once they had enough evidence, they wouldn't let them off the hook. At that moment, I was looking at an invitation to a banquet. This banquet was attended by the top representatives of various companies in the industry, and striking a deal here could secure your future for the next 20 years. Henry and Cindy coming to New York was largely for this reason. Their company was facing a major crisis due to poor management, and they urgently needed to negotiate a deal at this banquet to recover. As I opened the invitation, my eyes darkened bit by bit. Ever since Leo found out I cut off his inheritance rights, he seemed to have changed overnight. He toned down all his aggressiveness, and started being extremely obedient to me, trying hard to show filial respect. He kept buying me expensive skincare and luxury products. Since I had cut off his financial resources long ago, I knew these funds were surely from Henry and Cindy. I accepted them without a word, considering it as compensation for him getting money from me. "Leo, you are my son after all, and I still feel a bit sorry for you." I lay on the sofa, watching Leo kneeling on the ground, beating his chest respectfully, but there was no smile in my eyes. Leo now dared not be arrogant anymore, nodding and bowing his head, saying, "Mom, you're right. We are mother and son, and there should be no problems between us. From now on, I will listen to you on everything." "Oh really? If you only listen to me, then you cut off all ties with your father," I said casually, not missing the flash of coldness in Leo's eyes. After a few seconds of silence, he gritted his teeth and said, "Certainly, it's you, Mom, who raised me, so I'm closer to you." I smiled and extended a hand to him, and Leo, thinking I was going to forgive him, quickly grabbed my hand and sat down beside me. "Well then, if you listen to me, give me the gift your father gave you for your coming of age, I said matter-of-factly. I knew Henry and Cindy had given him an extremely valuable watch as a coming-of-age present, encrusted with dozens of diamonds worth millions. Leo was stunned when he heard that, his brows furrowing instinctively. He hesitated and said, "Mom, I really like this watch. After all, it's a gift from my dad." My expression darkened. "A gift from your dad? Don't forget, at the time when your dad was having an affair while I was carrying you, and I almost died from bleeding during your difficult birth. Despite all that, you're still thinking about your dad. I was planning to buy several good properties by the river for you in these days, but it seems all you care about is your dad's sentiment." Leo's Adam's apple involuntarily rolled when he heard this. Even if this watch is valuable, it surely doesn't compare to buying him several houses and giving him the right to inherit my property. "Mom, are you saying I can still inherit in the future?" he asked tentatively, and I gave him a slap straight on his cheek. "Nonsense. Those words I said earlier were just for show in front of the guests, to prevent them from gossiping. You are my only son. Who would I give my things to if not you?" Leo's eyes flashed, and he immediately took off the watch from his wrist and handed it to me. From what I gathered, Linda inexplicably fell down a staircase at the hospital, breaking her leg. My gut feeling told me it was Henry and Cindy's doing, probably to prevent her from revealing anything. I was content to let them fight among themselves, so I let them be. Soon, the high-end banquet arrived. All the top-notch luxury cars were coming and going, and the people getting out were exorbitantly rich. I dressed Leo up in a new outfit, like before, to take him to the event and let him see the world with me. During this time, Leo thought I had completely forgiven him and reverted to his smug self. Once as I passed by his room, I heard him secretly calling his father, "Dad, you can relax now." That idiot, as expected, and easily treats me like his own son again. Alice has devoted all her thoughts to me all these years. How could she really give up on me? "Dad, wait until I have all of her property in my hands. I will definitely end her and avenge my mom." Although I had already died once in his hands, hearing these words again, it was still painful. After all, I had raised Leo from infancy, pouring all my heart and soul into him. But as deep as my maternal love for him once ran, that's how much hatred I now harbored. Watching the guests entering the venue one after another, I concealed the hatred in my eyes and stepped in with Leo. Not surprisingly, as soon as I entered, I saw Henry and Cindy engaged in conversation with someone. But this time, they didn't make the effort to come forward when they saw me. They were just indifferent. What's more, not only them, but some people standing next to them also showed disdain when they saw me. Just as I was grabbing a glass of champagne, some of the wives of the CEOs passed by, disdainfully muttering a few words. What's the use of looking young through skincare when you're old? At your age, you still keep a young lover. How can a person who even abandons their own son be trusted? I will not let my company cooperate with her. People without morals don't succeed in business. We'll just wait and see. I knew they must be talking about the incident on the internet. Leo couldn't help but smile when he heard those words, waiting for me to become the butt of the joke. But they didn't know. I endured until today to make Henry and his crew fall hard when they were most triumphant and dazzling. The banquet was halfway through, after 3 rounds of drinks, when Henry and Cindy suddenly burst into laughter. I saw Cindy getting all excited, her face turning red, and Henry stood up with his glass, loudly offering his thanks. Leo sat beside me, watching as I, once the center of attention, was now being ignored by everyone, couldn't resist mocking. "Hey, Mom, look, Dad seems to have struck some big deal. And isn't the person sitting next to him the real estate big shot you've been trying to suck up to? If Dad seals a deal with him, won't he surpass you within 3 years?" I glanced at Leo, a small smile playing on my lips. The time had come. I suddenly stood up, holding my glass, and walked towards Henry. "Congratulations, Henry." Henry glanced at me, his eyes showing unmistakable disdain. Emboldened by the alcohol, he sneered, "Oh, look who decided to join us. Why aren't you with your little boyfriend?" At his words, the people around burst into laughter. I lifted my glass expressionlessly. The next moment, I poured all the wine inside it over him. The whole room fell silent. People from the other tables turned to look as well. Taken aback by the sudden drenching, Henry erupted, "Alice, have you gone crazy?" I smiled and said, "I'm not crazy." "But Henry, you were mistaken just now. The man you took a photo with on that forum, I don't know him. If anyone knows him, it should be you and your wife, right?" Henry's movements froze. Cindy also stood up abruptly. In the next moment, I clapped my hands loudly, and Jason, wearing a hat, entered step by step from the entrance. "Henry, you still owe me $1 million, Jason stated. Henry and Cindy had conspired with him to set me up, intending for Jason to humiliate me. Their goal was to ruin my reputation, so they could take over my company's market in Shanghai. Henry, both of you are so ruthless. When I was caught by the police, you didn't even try to help me, but it was Alice who eventually bailed me out, Jason said through gritted teeth, his eyes filled with intense hatred. Henry was left speechless by Jason's next words. Henry, whether what I say is true or not, when the police come to take someone away, we will find out, Jason continued. And also, I have come here today to reveal a very important secret to everyone. As the central screen in the hall slowly descended, Henry, Cindy, and Leo all showed expressions of fear and panic almost simultaneously. They must have sensed something, and their intuition was correct. The identity secret that had been kept hidden for 18 years was finally going to be exposed today. Henry, Cindy, the sins you committed are about to come back to haunt you. Leo witnessed his biological parents being taken away by the police and subjected to harsh accusations from the remaining people, pushing him to the brink of collapse. Being just an adult, Leo was overwhelmed with the external pressure, especially since he had learned everything from his parents, who were now gone. He couldn't handle all the criticism in this situation alone. How can you still stand there looking stupid? Quickly kneel down and apologize to your foster mother. The person who spoke had previously mocked Leo about his wealthy background, and immediately someone joined in. Exactly. They raised you, and instead of being grateful, you are trying to take their possessions. I won't let any company where I have influence hire you in the future. You will pay the price for your actions. Is a stolen life worth living? Eventually, you will have to repay everything you've taken. Enough. Just shut up. Leo roared in agony, covering his ears and desperately rushing outside. Watching his figure vanish, I took a deep breath and closed my eyes. In his previous life, just a month after I took him to this banquet, he had been in a car accident. If I hadn't pushed him away risking my own life, he would have died on the spot. In his past life, my sacrifice had saved him, but this time, there was no one protecting him. Hearing the screeching brakes and screams of passers-by outside, I slowly opened my eyes, feeling a bitter tear slide down my cheek. Finally, the debt of injustice had been completely settled today. Henry and Cindy were charged with hiring someone to commit assault and attempted murder to cover up their crime. They would face severe legal consequences. Later, I used all means to track down the doctors and nurses involved and brought them to justice. One nurse told me that my child never had a chance. He was born lifeless. Henry, at the sight of him, ordered to throw the child away, saying, "Looks just like his mother," always annoying everyone with her moral lectures. Perhaps he had despised me, the force behind pushing him to succeed, right from the start. After all these years, I had no idea where my child was now. All I could do was to erect a small tombstone for him. I realized that half of my life had passed, and I had never truly lived for myself. Then Leo's first wobbly steps towards me, his innocent smile, and calling me Mom. I forgave all the suffering that the world had put me through. I swore to protect him, but from the start, it was all wrong. If I could turn back time, I would never have chosen to be with Henry. Unfortunately, life doesn't offer second chances. I hope others can learn from my mistakes and avoid repeating my fate.